everybody, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be a very highly requested video after I mentioned it in one of my previous videos, and that is how to travel a lot as a teenager. Before I start this video, I just wanted to say give this video a big thumbs up if you're looking forward to more university videos and student videos from me, because obviously I'm now technically classed as a student. So make sure you give this video a like and comment down below what sort of videos you'd like to see in the near future. Also would like to add a disclaimer onto this video. Obviously I'm very aware that not only am I from a privileged sort of middle class background, I also am lucky enough to have been able to use my YouTube as a means of income. So when I'm talking about saving money and things, the money that I'm saving is the money that I get from YouTube. I'm aware that YouTube is relatively well paid, okay, very well paid compared to a lot of jobs, which I'm very, very grateful for. And I just wanted to say this before I started because I'm aware that YouTube allows me to travel a lot more than other teenagers might be able to. All of the trips that I go on with friends are paid for by me. My parents don't pay for any of it. The only trips that my parents pay for are family holidays, which we go on once every 2 years. So yeah, basically. So my first tip to travel a lot is you need to save money. Like, I know it sounds like a given, but it's just so much easier to travel if you have a set amount of money set away for that sort of thing. So what I would recommend and what I have is I have a separate savings account for traveling. So if you want to travel, then make sure you set like an allowance of money that you put in to your account each month, and it will really, really quickly pile up. So for me personally, I have a way, like my income is split into two. So like one half of my income that I get, not physically one half, but the one strand of my income goes straight into a savings account for travelling, and the other half is sort of disposable income. So, well, like, okay, the half that goes into travelling also goes into like house deposits and stuff that I'm going to need when I'm older, but I have a savings account for travelling where most of that goes into, and then my other half I use every day, you know, to like pay for clothes and food and everything like that. So if you're really, really wanting to save up, then make sure you're keeping a track of your expenses just to see where you could be cutting corners. Like, just don't go to Starbucks that one time and that £3 could go towards a flight or anything like that. Just make sure that you're being careful with your money, because as soon as you start like cutting out bits that aren't necessary, you'll notice how quickly the money will pile up and you'll be off on holiday before you know it. I also wanted to do a sort of quick section on safety and how to actually travel when you're there before I go on to different ways you can travel. So make sure that you have travel insurance, please, because if you don't have travel insurance and something goes wrong, things can get very bad very quickly, especially in non-EU countries. Like, seriously, it's not even that expensive. It cost me £11 for my last trip to get insured, and it's just nice to have peace of mind to know that it's there. If you're in the EU, make sure you take your EHIT card as well. I never remember what this stands for. European Health Card, I don't know what it is. It's like a little card that you've got that has all of your details on, and if you should get into trouble, this should be really, really helpful. Make sure you take a portable charger so that your phone doesn't die at any point while you're there, because there's nothing worse than being stuck in a sticky situation and not being able to ring or contact anyone. And also, when you get there, wherever you're staying, put some cash in the safe wherever you're staying and keep it there, because if you take all your cash out and you get robbed or mugged or whatever happens, you want to make sure that you do have some cash with you, and I would really, really recommend doing that because it's nice to have a backup. My other tip for safety is to try and learn some of the language. So you don't have to master the language, of course, but to make sure that you know basic phrases like, where is the doctor's, I'm in trouble, I need help, can you direct me to here, I'm lost. All of those sort of things are really, really useful to learn. But if you do want to master the language a little bit further, I've actually partnered up with Rosetta Stone for this video, which is so freaking exciting because as a linguist you don't understand how like big Rosetta Stone is in the languages world, and they have partnered up with me to tell you about their app. So at the moment I'm learning French with Rosetta Stone because I went on work experience to Geneva in Switzerland last year. Was it last year? Yeah, last year, and I had such a good time, and it made me really want to consider a career in the UN. And obviously if I wanted to live in Geneva, then speaking French would be very useful. So this is the app here. I will put an overlay of me using the app so you can see it better, but basically it's so useful because it's split into different sections. So it has like language basics, greetings and introductions, work and school, shopping, travel, which obviously would be very useful if you're traveling, past and future, all of these sort of things. So really help you as you get along, you get onto more sort of complex ones. So I have done the language basics and the greetings and introductions one. I've been doing it for about 20 minutes every day, and I've really noticed that for me, when I was learning German and Spanish, I was always very good at the written and like reading and listening, but speaking was always my weakness. But because I've been doing Rosetta Stone, actually I'm better at speaking French than I am at writing it, which actually is really kind of refreshing for once.
J'habite dans une maison. Nous habitons dans une maison. Elle habite dans un appartement. Paris, Paris.
J'habite dans l'appartement 8.
J'habite dans l'appartement 8. Où est-ce que tu habites?
J'habite dans l'appartement 2.
J'habite dans l'appartement 2.
L'homme porte un manteau noir. Porte.
Porte.
Le livre est grand.
Le livre est grand.
Elle embrasse son mari.
Elle embrasse son mari.
La fille est sous le lit. L'homme est sur la voiture.
L'homme est sous la voiture. So it has speech recognition technology, so you can speak into the app and it will tell you if you're saying it correctly, and you can literally have like conversation simulations. So they'll ask you a question and you've got to answer it. It'll tell you what the situation is and you've got to try and think of the question that you would need in that situation. So it really means that you're learning French that you will actually need if you were going to live there, rather than going through your grammar tables and doing it that way, which obviously is very good if you really want to master the language in like super in depth and you've got years and years to learn it. But if you want to master a language in conversational style and actually learn language that's relevant to what you would need in everyday life, then Rosetta Stone is absolutely fabulous. So I would mention my discount code in the description because you can get 50% off any language, which I think is amazing because that's a real discount. And I'll also leave the link for the free demo in the description if you're interested. I really would recommend Rosetta Stone. I think it's such a good idea, and the app means that you can kind of just take it anywhere you want to go. And yeah, I'm glad that I'm partnering with Rosetta Stone, and I really genuinely would recommend them. I think that if you're trying to master a language in a conversational style rather than learning it by the book, then Rosetta Stone is really a good option. So now I've spoken about how to get around when you're traveling, then you need to think about how you're going to travel. So there are obviously lots of different modes of traveling that people might not necessarily think of. So when you think of traveling, you usually think of hopping on a plane, but a lot of the time that is the expensive option. If you are hopping on a plane, make sure you travel smart. So things like Skyscanner and Kayak are websites that you can use to compare flight prices, and it can also show you what months of the year are cheapest. If you are lucky enough to be in year 11 or year 13 or at university and you're not in school or at university during term times, normal term times, I would definitely recommend travelling then. So for example, me, Molly, Liv and Nu and Lizzie all travelled to Madrid out of term time, which meant that it was a lot cheaper and the accommodation and the flights were a lot cheaper. Don't worry about travelling with budget airlines. I've travelled with Ryanair, Flybe, Aer Lingus, all of these airlines that are supposed to be budget, and they're actually really good. Jet2 as well, EasyJet are all really good airlines, and you can usually get staggeringly cheap fares. If you're not fussy about where you want to travel, then definitely just look at the flights and look where's cheapest. Like some flights to Poland are like £10–12, so that would be a really good way of doing it if you want to sort of surprise yourself. Look at what flights are cheapest and then book it, rather than looking for cheap flights for a set destination. Don't be lured in by extras. Travel smart. You don't need to sit together on the plane. Often you don't need extra luggage, so if you are travelling with budget airlines, they will be a really cheap flight, but then the extra costs will add up quite quick if you let them. There'll be costs for seats, there'll be costs for priority boarding, there'll be costs for having space in the cabin for your luggage. You don't need that. If there's not space in the cabin, they'll put it in the hold. Don't be lured in by all these extras. Usually I will just book my flight and that's it, no extras, and I have a perfectly nice experience. Obviously if you're going for a couple of weeks, then you might need carry on, but even then, share a suitcase with your friends. You know, travel smart and the costs won't be too high. My other top tip for airports and flights and everything: don't be lured in by taxi transfers. If you can get public transport from the airport to your accommodation, do it. So in Naples, for example, it was really easy to just get a bus from the airport to where I was staying pretty much, and it cost me €5. A taxi transfer would have been €45. don't get lured in by that, because I know it's a bit of a faff and everything, but it's so much easier to spend your money on other things rather than spending 50-60 euros on a taxi and then being skint for the rest of your trip but having had a nice trip to your accommodation. Granted, some airports, some places, you do have to get a taxi because it is just in the middle of nowhere, but even Birmingham Airport, London, like there are trains and things that you can get from the airport to the city centre. So try and do that if you can, and look it up before you go. Another option is boat travel. So a lot of people don't think of this one, but if you want to travel to places like Amsterdam or Spain or France, then ferries can often be the cheaper option. So for example, I'm pretty sure you can get a ferry, an overnight ferry from Hull to Amsterdam, I think, and Molly did a video on it, I swear, and there's also ferries you can get from down south to Spain and France. So if you're looking for a different mode of transport, then maybe consider boat travel. I used to travel on ferry every single year when I was younger, and I always really liked it. So another option that's quite obvious is train. So if you're at my age, then you're probably thinking about going interrailing. Obviously, this is a really, really good idea if you're up for it. Do remember though that there are very long travel times. You'll be spending a lot of time traveling, whereas a plane is obviously a lot quicker. But by the same token, you know, it is nice if you want to travel Europe, you can hop from city to city relatively easily. If you plan your route correctly, you don't have to spend too much time traveling. I would also recommend trying to avoid reservations. So a lot of the time the trains will be quite cheap, but then reservations are like 50 euros. So maybe try and avoid doing that. You can go on the Rail Planner app, which is what you use to plan your interrailing journey, and you can avoid, you know, sort of 50 euro reservations for a seat. Obviously if you're on a night train you probably will need a reservation, but that can add up really, really quickly. Also, if you're travelling to somewhere like Brussels or Paris just as a trip, then really consider the Eurostar, because it is a lot cheaper than flying a lot of the time. So when I went to Paris with some YouTubers, we took the Eurostar and it was a really, really nice experience, and it took us straight into Paris, into the heart of Paris, and you could even have gone further and have gone to Disneyland. So I would really, really recommend that if you're looking to travel quite like into Europe but quite close to home. The Eurostar actually goes to quite a lot of places now. And my final form of transport, which is one that people don't think of, is coach. So this year I went on a coach holiday with Paris International Coaches. This isn't an ad, by the way, or anything. This is just me saying, like, I'd never thought of a coach holiday before, because I thought, oh, you spend hours on a coach, like who would want to do that? I would want to do that. I want to do it again. Honestly, coach travel, it's great. So this holiday, basically what happened was we were basically picked up from down the road from where we lived. This coach had screens in the back of the like chairs, so it was like an airplane, and it had better films than an airplane. It had air conditioning. It had what they called a person on the trip that accompanies the trip, courier, that was offering us cheap drinks every 10 minutes basically. So I was topped up on tea the whole time. It had amazing panoramic views. You didn't have to worry about security. You didn't have to worry about bag checks. You could take as many bags as you wanted. It was great. And as well as that, everywhere we were traveling, the courier and the driver were giving us information on where we were going, and there was like music. So when we went into Austria, they played the Sound of Music soundtrack, and when we came off the Eurostar, they played the Thunderbird soundtrack, and it was just really, really fun. And yeah, I spent a lot of time on the coach, but I didn't mind because the views were spectacular. And it also meant that not only did I get to go to Italy, which was amazing, the hotel was amazing and the place was amazing, I also got to stay in Austria and Germany and Belgium overnight and stay and visit Bruges and Rudesheim and Limburg and St Anton, which I wouldn't have visited necessarily if I hadn't have done that. Also, it was half board for pretty much the whole holiday, so you had breakfast included and a set menu, and the set menu meant that I actually had, you know, food that wasn't just pizza and pasta. And oh my gosh, I absolutely loved it. I would really recommend. There were a couple of sort of groups of early 20s people that had gone on as a girls' holiday, which I thought was really, really cool. We're already booked our next holiday for next year. Next year we're going to the Austrian lakes because it was just so good this year. It was so easy, like it was just the easiest form of traveling I've ever done. You could just chill and enjoy yourself without having to worry about transfers, even excursions. So when we were in Italy, we went to Verona, we went to Venice, we went to Malcesine, we went to Limone, and we did all of that on the coach, so we didn't have to worry about trains or anything like that, all whilst being on a coach with loads of leg room, with reclining seats. It was absolutely amazing. Like, I just think that coach travel is just the best way to go. I'll link Paris International down below if I remember, but they're obviously a West Midlands based company. But if you look all across the country, there are coach travel operators that you can do that with. Now I've got some tips about accommodation. My number one tip for accommodation is to go back to basics. If you are traveling Europe, like, don't think that you need a fancy hotel room, because A, you won't be spending a lot of time in it, and B, it's just not worth the money. So we stayed in an Airbnb when I was in Naples, and it was literally a room with a bathroom, and it had a kitchen, a bed, and the bathroom. It was in a normal area. It cost me £75 for 4 days. Like, that is so cheap, and it was perfectly decent. Like, it was really, really easy to stay in. We weren't in there very often, so it didn't matter anyway, and I could have booked a really expensive hotel, but that would have just been a waste of money. Same goes for Airbnb. Airbnb can be really, really cheap, and especially when you're traveling in big groups. So in Paris, there was so many of us. There was like 12, 13 of us. We booked a huge, like a massive 4-story house that cost us like £100 each for the 5 days, which is insane. And it was such a beautiful house with a nice living room and a kitchen and like loads of bedrooms. And yeah, so if you're traveling in a group, you really can get Airbnbs quite cheap. I would recommend that. If you are desperate to stay in a hotel, which I completely understand, I stay in a hotel quite a lot when I go travelling, then I would recommend using Expedia, Trivago and Booking.com and lastminute.com. So lastminute.com doesn't necessarily have to be last minute, but especially Expedia and Booking.com, they have like deals, like really good deals, quite a lot. So when I went to Berlin, we stayed in the Radisson Blu, which is one of the most expensive hotels in Berlin, but I got it for £300 for both of us for 4 days. Like, that's literally mad. It was reduced from 750. So make sure you're checking these websites for flash sales, and be savvy. Go on lots of websites for the same hotel and try and get the cheapest price. Don't be afraid to stay a little bit out of the centre. Honestly, it's actually quite nice because you get to see other areas. So when we were in Amsterdam, we stayed in Zaandam, I think it was, which was a short train ride out of Amsterdam. But Zaandam itself was absolutely beautiful, and the hotel was stunning, but a lot cheaper than staying in central Amsterdam. My last tip for accommodation would be, don't rule out hostels. A lot of people have like horror stories of hostels, but if you are traveling alone or traveling with like 1 or 2 of you, then staying in hostels can be absolutely like the best thing ever, because not only do you get to meet other travelers who are traveling alone, you might be able to, like, I don't know, learn a bit more of a language or something like that. So I've stayed in hostels in London, London, oh my god, I actually can't remember. London, I'm going to keep saying London now. Barcelona. I've stayed in quite a few hostels in my time, basically. And, you know, I've always stayed in with friends, so we've bought like a big dorm room together. So when we were in London, it cost me £75 for the whole trip, and that was including like travel and everything and expenses, and we stayed in a big dorm room, the 10 of us, so that was really, really nice. But I wouldn't be worried about staying in a dorm room with other people if you're traveling by yourself, because people will give you your space, and it's so much cheaper than staying in a hotel room, and you'll get to make new friends as well. As well as that, like if you're staying in a hostel, they often have like a lot of discount codes for the local area, plus they have fridges, like communal fridges where you can share food, so that will save you money as well. Honestly, don't be worried about staying in hostels, especially if you're staying with friends. It really isn't that daunting, and most of the time hostels these days, especially in London, like are quite cool and trendy. So I really would recommend looking into hostels if you're looking at a way to stay somewhere cheaply. When it comes to food, you really can save money by not eating out. So as I said, hostels have kitchen facilities, so like make yourself packed lunches, make yourself dinner, go to supermarket shopping rather than eating out for every meal. Whenever I get to a place, I'm going to Prague literally tomorrow. Have I packed? No. But I'm going to Prague tomorrow, and the first thing we're going to do is go to the supermarket, because we're staying in an apartment. So we're going to go to the supermarket and get food, so we don't have to pay for breakfast, and that we can take stuff out with us to snack on during the day, and that can really save you money. Use your student discount. Honestly, you can use student discount in so many places. I really would recommend trying to use your student discount, because you can get so much money off food. And my last tip for food, because this is just one that people don't think about, is don't spend too much money on drinks if you can't afford it. Drinks, honestly, are so expensive. You buy a Coke for €2.50. Before you know it, you've spent €100 on drinks in one holiday. It's lethal. If you can have water, but if you want to enjoy drinks, make sure that you budget for it, because they cost so much more than you would think. Like, be careful, seriously. My hair looks so long in this video. I'm not sure if I like it. I feel like I need to get a haircut, because right now it's looking like I've got my long hair again, and I'm not a fan. My last tips are for sightseeing. So sightseeing in lots of European cities is very, very easy. If you're staying in a city like Bruges, or like loads of cities, I don't want to list them all now, but they're often very compact. So if you can, try and avoid using public transport. Walk it. Not only is that good for your health, it means that you're saving a lot of money that you can spend on actually visiting the sites, and you actually get to see lots of cute little areas that you might not necessarily have seen had you taken the bus. So I really would recommend walking. Again, with student discount, most European places, if you're from 18 to 25 or 16 to 25 and you're an EU citizen, you get student discount. So make sure that you make the most of that before we leave the EU in March, because I think when we went to Pompeii I got it like for a third of the price because I was a student. So make sure you're asking at places like, do you have student discount? Most of the time they will speak English, but if you can learn it in the language, that's even better. So often in the summer, places like Berlin and Amsterdam will have like free events going on, like free concerts and parades and pride and everything like that. So make sure you make the most of those, because those will be free rather than paying like 25 euros to get into the Met or something in New York. Like, go to a street market and enjoy yourself there. You don't have to pay money to sightsee. There's lots to see and do in lots of cities that you don't have to pay for. So make sure you're savvy with it and you don't need to spend as much money as you think. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It was very long, and again, I know I said this in my last video, but I'm sorry if I'm shouting. Like, it's because I've got no voice, so I really have to shout for it not to sound like this. This is what it sounds like when I'm normally talking. So I have to shout for you guys to understand me. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, I am aware that I'm very lucky to get the income that I do, but I was just trying to give you tips. I'm not trying to give you chips. I'm trying to give you tips to save money while you're traveling. So I hope that this was useful. If it was, give it a big fat thumbs up. And yeah, I will see you very soon in a new video. Bye guys. Mwah.